What's going on, guys? Marcus back again here with another video. Thanks for joining in. Piling on some videos that I started before. I've gotten some good responses from them. And today's video is going to be about how to be a good guild member. We've seen numerous books, numerous guides, numerous videos about how to be a good officer, how to be a good raid leader, how to be a good guild master. But I think an untapped, I guess, notion would be how to be a good guild member. Now, I touched on it before in one of my videos, and the reason why I think it's important is 95% of the guild should be comprised of guild members, and I think that being a good guild member is as important as it can be for the survival of guilds. Now, this is coming from my perspective, both as a guild member for numerous years and as a guild master for over 4 years. I think that some of the qualities of being a guild member, a good guild member, starts with, as I said before, consistency and teamwork. And by consistency, I mean always showing up on time. We as guild masters, we know who's showing up to our raids and we know who's not. And we know who's phoning it in. We know who's kind of dedicated. We know who's not dedicated. And the reason why that's so important is we're very, very likely to recruit past you if you're not someone who shows up on time. And what I mean by recruit past you is, we as guild masters, we tend to formulate our roster. We tend to have a written roster down, and we tend to prioritize that roster. We say, okay, well, I've got 5 range DPS, but 2 of them are people who are unreliable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting out feelers for some more range DPS and see if I can't replace this person who's not always showing up. Not replace right away, but I mean, like, I'm going to keep tabs on some range DPS and say, hey, I've got 2 guys that are kind of, they're only showing up 1 day a week. I'm going to try and fill that void. So that's one thing that I want you to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind about being a good guild member is being a good soldier. And by that, I mean just, sometimes you got to swallow your pride, follow orders, and push forward. And not everyone can be a leader. There can only be so many cooks in the kitchen. And usually, in fact, in all honesty, there should only be one person making demands, making commands during a raid or even in a guild. Sometimes the officers are just kind of there to kind of be extra muscle in case things go awry, or maybe an extra voice or extra opinions for the guildmaster, but they tend to work better as benevolent dictatorships. So, speaking of a benevolent dictatorship, that's when the guild member comes into play, and the the teamwork philosophy comes into play. So, I'm going to say something here that I want every single person who's a guild member needs to hear and needs to take to heart. We as guild masters, we want every single guild member that is with us that's consistent. That's consistent. We want every single one of those people to get best in slot gear. We want you to get gear. So please, for the love of God, don't be a loot whore. It is the worst thing you could ever be in a guild. We talked about what you should do. That's what you should not do. You should not be a loot whore. We want you to get gear. And if you show up consistently and you're a team player, you're going to get gear. So please don't be a loot whore. I mean, that goes without saying, but it has to be said. So we've touched on those 3 major components, all right? And also, when it comes to being a good guild member, is understand that this entire operation is a team. I encourage anybody out there that wants to be part of a guild to try and take part in some other type of teamwork activity outside of the game. In person, obviously right now we're all pretty much going to be quarantined here pretty soon, but I mean when things pick back up, I want you to participate in some type of social in-person teamwork activity, and that's going to make it easier for you to grasp what a guild is all about. And if you participate in those types of things, it's easier to translate that into a guild. One of the things I noticed is that a lot of my guild members that played sports in high school, they tended to have egos, but they also tended to understand, like, hey, sometimes we got to swallow some shit here. It's like, okay, we're going to have to wipe a few times till the rest of the team kind of moves forward, So that's pretty much what has come to mind when it comes to being a good guild member. It's really not that hard, you know. Just put in the effort, show up consistently, work as a team, and don't be selfish. That's really it. Those are the pillars of being a good guild member. If you're looking for specifics, that we can address. The problem is there's so many specifics out there. This would be like a 2 hour long rant, and I don't think anyone wants to listen to a 2 hour long video. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut it short there. If there's anything you want me to specifically address about being a good guild member, let me know in the comments. There's just way too many stories, but as I continue to think and reflect and look back on my time, I'm gonna remember some stories about, okay, here's an instance of not being a good guild member. I mean, we all have our loot horror stories, but here's one thing that I do want to touch on. Let me take a sip of my coffee here. It's really early. One thing I do want to touch on is one of our biggest pet peeves as guild masters that's been a thing lately, especially since like late Wrath Cataclysm and on, is alts. At least is my big pet peeve. So what tends to happen is you tend to have players in your guild that will pick a class. Maybe it's not. Maybe it hasn't been their main forever. They're switching classes or whatnot, right? Then they get 3 or 4 weeks into progression, or maybe even longer into progression. They start to get bored with the game in general, and they think that the fastest solution to that problem is to switch classes. Okay, if I just switch I'm tired of my class. You're really tired of the game. I need to switch classes. That is one of the biggest pet peeves of mine and a lot of guild members, is the alt policy. And the reason why is pretty simple, and I won't take too much of your time on this one, is except with the personal loot thing that's been going on lately. Beforehand, you have master loot. Guild masters don't want to gear up one of your tunes only for you to ditch it after 2 or 3 weeks and then have us carry your undergeared alt. It's not fair. It's just not fair. I don't care what way you spin it. It's just not fair. So stick with the class that you're with unless you're been told to switch. Like, hey, we need a healer. You need to go switch and play a healing class or that kind of stuff. So that alt policy has caused me nothing but grief. I have probably 10 stories about how that's caused me grief, including one of my best guild members pulled that stunt on me. So I'll go ahead and close with that. If you have any questions or comments, or you want me to address anything specific about being a good guild member, let me know. But those are the basics. So I'll be back soon with another video. Take care, guys.